And I see this log, part of a branch, a pretty good sized branch, go up and over the tallest guy's head. And so as soon as I see that, they're all freaking out because they heard it. They didn't see it, but I saw it go over. And so I go back down to the creek bed to try to see anything I can see. Sometimes these things happen to people, and they feel like woozy, they get sick, they feel like they just need to sit down, they feel like they're about to pass out, they might get intensely scared, they might feel euphoric. There's just weird things that happen in Bigfoot research. And so our term kind of in the Bigfoot world, we call it being, it's going to happen. It's going to happen right now because I am here all by myself. No one knows where I am. And she's left me.
Welcome back to another episode of the Mind Your Own Business podcast. I'm attorney Jerry Parisi, and with me today is Melissa Adair, Sasquatch expert. Did I get that right?
I'm a student of Sasquatch, I should say.
Student of Sasquatch. Okay. What's the difference between Sasquatch and Bigfoot?
Well, it just depends on where you live. Okay. There are lots of names for what we refer to as the Bigfoot creature. So Sasquatch is a Native American name that just kind of means wild man. And so that's been around for a really long time. And then in different parts of the world, they call it different things. In Australia, they call it the Yowie. In Asia, they call it the Yeren or the Yeti. There's all kinds of names for it.
So it's referring to the same
creature.
Same creature. Mm-hmm. And the same type of creature lives in all these different places across continents?
There have been footprints that have been spotted and captured, as well as video evidence globally, everywhere. And the depending on where in the world they are, sometimes the size of these creatures varies or the colors vary, much like people. We have different races of people. They look different, but essentially we're the same creature. We just might look a little different or be different sizes. So it's kind of the same thing that we've discovered in Bigfoot research.
Okay. How long have you been in this world?
I've been captivated and involved with the Sasquatch Bigfoot mystery since 2005.
Wow.
It really started earlier than that. My interest began as a child. My dad was really interested in Bigfoot.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And so I grew up in the 70s. I'm a Gen Xer. And so we'd had In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. And so there would be Bigfoot episodes that would come on with that, and we'd watch it and together. And we were a musical family, and my dad would play guitar, and he'd make up songs about Bigfoot, and we'd sing them. So it was just always kind of this interest. And then my dad also had a book, and I think it was a Reader's Digest book. And I believe the title was Strange Facts and Amazing Fiction. And in that book were all kinds of oddities and unknown, unexplained things. But there was a huge picture of the famous Patterson-Gimlin film creature that was caught. The classic, iconic picture you see of Bigfoot everywhere with the creature with the arms swinging back. Yeah. And so that picture was in there. And I was always fascinated by it. That film is actually back in the spotlight again in the Bigfoot world because a documentary has just come out. I don't think it's been released to the public yet. Not everyone has seen it, but everyone's weighing in on it that claims that, that it was a hoax. But up until this point, it's the only piece of video evidence that we have that's never been successfully scientifically debunked. So, and from what I know of it, from different people that I've talked to that are way smarter than me, that have studied locomotion and studied all kinds of things pertaining to what they see in that video, they feel that it is real. Based on the different research I've done, I have to say that looks real to me. I've also seen other pieces of video evidence. You can find them online everywhere. And then with AI being so prolific now, it makes it even harder to tell what's real and what's not. But there are some things before AI got popular that have been put out that I also feel like they caught something that was real. The problem is the minute you find something, you take a picture, you get some video, and you throw it out there for everybody to see. for as many people who are going to say it's real or looks real, just as many people or more are going to say it's a hoax or it's fake. So, that's just kind of the world we live in.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know.
Well, I was going to ask that as soon as you started going, I was like, I bet AI is going to make it much more difficult to determine what's real versus what's a hoax versus.
I mean, AI makes anything. I'm in the space of, conspiracy theories and the unexplained. It makes everything difficult because you see a lot of things coming out across the spectrum of the unexplained that some of it looks absolutely real or could be real. Right. And, it's always been difficult to tell in some cases, but now it's even more so.
So at this point, in your opinion, is Bigfoot, is it still a legend, a myth, or is there enough concrete evidence to say that Bigfoot is real?
I think it depends on who you talk to. But I would say for me personally, I feel like there's enough evidence out there suggesting or pointing to a creature of considerable size that has a bone structure and a skeletal structure that's able to make these footprints globally that have been spotted, cast, and tested for authenticity and ruled out to be, not a fake globally. So I feel like that in and of itself is proof that there's something out there. For me, I just really want to see one. I've been doing this for, since 2005. And I have yet to actually see one. I've had a lot of really strange things happen. If you spend a lot of time in the woods at night all over the country, you're going to have some interesting experiences. And I've had quite a few. Some of them I do feel were, I was really close to what I believe was a Sasquatch.
So you actually go out into the field, out into the woods and hunt to try to find and try to see Bigfoot yourself.
I do.
Okay. Tell me about some of those experiences.
Sure. Well, when I very first got into doing this, it was in 2005, and I went with my father. There's an organization called the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. It's Matt Moneymaker's group. He was one of the guys on Finding Bigfoot that was on Animal Planet for a lot of seasons, if you remember that. My dad came to me, I guess at the end of 2004, we lost my mom that summer, and he came to me and said, I just want you to know that my interest in Bigfoot is still very much alive and well, and I've taken it to the interwebs, because back at that time, it was, the internet and Facebook and all those things were kind of just a thing. YouTube was kind of just a thing. We were all kind of getting used to it and not really utilizing it yet and seeing its value. And so I'm like, okay, cool, that's cool. I'll go. And he's like, well, they're gonna have an expedition here in North Georgia in February of 2005. And I could tell he kind of wanted to go, but wasn't sure if he wanted to go by himself or not. And I'm like, I'll totally go with you. I want to go. That sounds fun. So we went, and it was the weekend of my brother's birthday. So my dad, I guess, felt like he needed to take my brother and not just me away on a trip for on my brother's birthday weekend. But my brother is a huge skeptic, so I wasn't sure how that was going to go. And at one point, my dad and I ended up kind of doing our own thing because we were the believers, and my brother just thought we were kind of all nuts. So, but I thought going into this that I'd probably meet some class A weirdos, right? I was expecting that. I mean, I kind of went to see that, right? I wanted to, who are these weirdos out here looking for Bigfoot, I was blown away by how nice and normal all of these people were. And we all bonded and had such a great time with this shared interest. And some people were there because they had actually seen something that they couldn't explain. Other people had stories in their family, like Uncle Bob or somebody had seen something and that story had passed down and they wanted answers, so that's why they were there. And it was fascinating. I mean, I had an incredible time just talking to all these people and hearing all these firsthand accounts of sightings. And then, of course, Matt Moneymaker, was great. He took us out in the field and told us kind of what to look for and, habitats that were common for sightings and this kind of thing. So it was very educational. And I grew up a tomboy, and we had woods behind our house. And so this was just like reliving childhood for me. I loved it. I thought it was great. So after we did that first expedition here in Georgia, we wanted to go again. I thought that was great.
You got the bug.
Yeah.
Bigfoot bug.
I did. And so me and my dad and my husband this time went to the next one. And
you left your brother, the skeptic.
Yeah, we left the skeptic at home.
Okay.
But we went, and I believe that was in eastern North Carolina. And so again, a lot of the same people were there. There were actually a couple of actual weirdos there this time. So I was like, okay, this is what I expected to see, like hundreds of the first time.
You don't say.
There were some weirdos, but they were, everybody tolerated them because everybody else was there. They were kind of serious. They had a serious interest in what this was all about. We didn't really have much happen, but I learned a lot about about the toys. Got to play with the third generation night vision, and thermal was not readily available at that time. Now everybody has a thermal, but at the time, it was extremely expensive and hard to come by, right? So I think that was the first time I had exposure to some sort of a thermal unit. Somebody had brought one just for the group to experience, and so we got to see what that was like, and that was cool. So, I just learned a lot about these toys and a little bit about people putting out recorders to capture sounds and that kind of thing. So very much a learning experience. That was cool. Not a lot happened, but I learned a lot. And then my third expedition was a few months later, and it was just me and my husband that time. And we went to West Virginia. And that was the time that something happened where I went, okay, there's something out here. I mean, this is not a joke. There's something out here. I think it was like our second night there. Usually the expeditions were about 3 or 4 nights. The second night that we were there, a bunch of us had gone into town to have dinner, and we came back to the base camp area, and there were about 10 of us that had come back. And while we were coming back from dinner, these 3 people who had stayed behind, who were all new, they were all newbies to this, they were like, they had eyes like saucers, and they were just talking really fast. And they said, "You'll never believe what happened. We went out there and we sat on this rock and we turned out our light and we just listened. And we started hearing these growls, and then things started being thrown at us. We started like these rocks or something were being thrown at us. And it was 2 guys and a girl. The girl was a girlfriend of one of the guys. And she got so terrified that she was physically shaking, and they had to like take her out
while she's telling the story.
This is what happened while we were at dinner.
Okay.
And so they had to bring her back to base camp. So when we came back, we found them, I guess, newly returned to base camp. And so we all looked at each other and said, let's go do it again. Show us exactly where you were. We're going to do exactly what you did. And so the 13 of us went out. It was along a river. We hiked this trail along a river, maybe, I don't know, a quarter of a mile. It wasn't that far. And there was a big rock outcropping where they sat. And so it was big enough for all of us. So we sat on the rock outcropping. We kind of spread out on it, and we all turned out our headlamps, and we just sat there and we just listened. And several minutes go by, and crickets, just nothing, nothing. And so I'm just like, that figures. And I said that nothing would happen. And so we started talking, and we made a group decision that, maybe there were too many of us, that we were a big group. They were just 3 people sitting on a rock before, and now we got 13. It's like an army out here in the woods, right? And so we decided to split up our group. 7 people went on up the trail, and then 6 of us remained back at the outcropping. And I was with the group that remained back at the outcropping. And we had radios. We would radio back and forth. And what's commonly done in a lot of Bigfoot research is to make invitations, such as to do tree knocking, because that's been associated with Bigfoot behavior, and also to do howls. If you start making these vocals, sometimes you can get like this man-beast type howl to come back. Anyway, we were there, and there was a guy in my group that was like built like a linebacker, and he had a Louisville Slugger wooden baseball bat. And I said, "You're the tree knocker for our group, because nobody can knock a tree like you," right? So anyway, we designated him the tree knocker. So we radioed to the group up ahead. We're going to do 2 tree knocks in a couple of seconds. And they radioed back, "Okay, we're listening." And so he did. And then they radioed back that they were going to do one. So we're hearing it. We had this little banter of tree knocks is going back and forth, and it's cool, we're just listening. Well, at some point, we hadn't been doing this very long, when the guy does a really good tree knock, and it was loud. And then all of a sudden, like split seconds after he knocks, we hear this boom, right kind of like between the groups. And it like made his loud knock like soft, like a whisper. I mean, it was just so loud. And we're like, the other group radioed back immediately and said, we didn't do that. We didn't do that. That wasn't us. And like, we didn't do that either. That wasn't us. And so they're like, okay. And so we're just all kind of frozen. And I said, nothing happened for a while. We just kind of sat and listened, waiting for it to happen again. And so we decided maybe it was time to do some calls. And so I have a loud call and somebody in the other group had a loud call. So we were kind of calling back and forth, radioing that we were doing this. And again, we hadn't been doing it very long when all of a sudden the only way I can describe it is a huge man beast howl came off on the ridge that was kind of up behind us between the two groups. And it came out of a huge chest cavity. It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It was like nothing I had ever heard before. And that's when I went, okay, something's out here. That's not normal. That's not a coyote. I know what coyotes sound like. That's weird. And so we stayed out there all night trying to see if we could hear another howl like that. There was different stuff happening back and forth. I did get to hold the 3rd generation night vision, and they were binoculars. So if you've ever had a chance to use that at night, it's like looking through daylight. You put them up and you can see everything. So I had it, and I kind of walked a little bit away from our group because I was hearing movement kind of down in the creek bed between the two groups. And then at one point, it sounded like things were falling out of trees around us. And then we all realized, I don't think they're falling out of trees. I think something's being thrown at us. And so so I'm really scanning this creek bed, and I walk a few paces away from the group and turn and look back at the group. I'm on the trail, and I see this log, part of a branch, a pretty good sized branch, go up and over the tallest guy's head. And so as soon as I see that, they're all freaking out because they heard it. They didn't see it, but I saw it go over. And so I go back down to the creek bed to try to see anything I can see. And I can't see anything. And that was really unnerving because I saw it go up and over.
Mm-hmm. And it was what, a large tree branch?
It was like a large tree branch. It wasn't something that you could easily toss. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a pretty good, it had weight to it. We're all scanning. I explained to the group what just happened. We're all looking. We have limited technology to really, see anything. We're having to share. I'm passing the binoculars for everybody to look, say, I can't see anything. See if I'm missing something. And so we're passing it back and forth. We're hearing movement back and forth. This kind of went on for, like an hour and a half. And we never heard another howl. We never heard a really, really loud bang like that again. But it was also the night of the first freeze in that area. And we were well after midnight. And a lot of us were like, we're frozen. We can't do this anymore. And we're going to go back to base camp to get warm. And so just a very few remained back. But the few that remained back were rewarded because they saw like a head and shoulders shape peep behind a tree. They saw like movement through the bushes that were real thick around the area. Something was there. And then there were some people that reported red eye shine, which is commonly reported with Bigfoot sightings as well. So I feel that was my first Bigfoot howl. We can debate, but I feel like that was my first Bigfoot howl. And so at that point, I was really hooked. I'm like, okay, I have to go out and do this more. I have to go more places and see this stuff. So we did. For the next several years, we got really into it. I interviewed a lot of people, a lot of hunters that had seen stuff in the woods when they were hunting, heard their eyewitness accounts, became more and more convinced that yes, these people are seeing something. I have no idea what it is, but they're seeing something. And it's fascinating, right? And so I just really want to see one at this point because they're all sharing. Some people would see them and just it would be a quiet encounter. Other people looking back felt like they were encroaching on territory. Maybe there was something, and they were kind of screamed at or yelled at and or bluff charged, which is a very common behavior in apes to bluff charge.
What you mean by that, I guess, is running up.
They'll run up and stop. You run up and stop.
Something.
To scare you off. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so these kind of things happen. And it was just, again, it just fueled me to want to know more. And so I went on more and more expeditions. I helped organize some expeditions. And then, just different things would happen. I'd have really interesting experiences that happened several times, over the years. And then at some point, kind of took a sabbatical from it because about 7 or 8 years ago, I started my own digital marketing business. And as a business owner, you get swamped. I never truly left doing it, but I just, I took a step back from it because I had I had a website that was dedicated to Bigfoot stuff that I did with a partner, and we had John Green is a famous Bigfoot researcher from in the way back of times, and he would collect all of these newspaper articles that dated back to like the 1500s that were sightings of wild men.
Really?
So we had those. We had his whole collection, and we would put those out. I still have those. If anyone listening has interest, you can go to my Bigfoot Chick Adventures Facebook page and click on the photos, and you can see those. They're there. They're just fascinating. So they've been around for forever, right? As we were over the years, right before I stopped kind of going at it so regularly and taking a little bit of a sabbatical, I had a series of different things happen that I just found fascinating, that I still are kind of like some of my go-to stories when people want to know, what do you think happened? There is a phenomenon that happens in Bigfoot research that some people believe is infrasound. And infrasound is sound lower than the human ear can hear. And it was first discovered by people who worked with elephants. They would get sick. They would get nauseated, disoriented. Sometimes they would faint. I mean, just all kind of different. Sometimes they'd feel intense anxiety. Sometimes they get really scared for no reason, and it's thought that elephants generate infrasound so that they can communicate across vast distances with other herds or whatever. Other animals with large chest cavities can also produce infrasound. It happens in nature. Thunderstorms produce infrasound. There's just, it's a thing. It's a scientifically proven thing. It's out there. And so there is a thought that it happens with Bigfoot research because sometimes these things happen to people and they feel like woozy, they get sick, they feel like they just need to sit down, they feel like they're about to pass out, they might get intensely scared, they might feel euphoric. There's just weird things that happen in Bigfoot research. And so our term kind of in the Bigfoot world, we call it being zapped by Bigfoot. I've had several different experiences where I felt like that happened to me. One of the first times it happened, I was out doing research in the North Georgia mountains. Well after midnight, I only had one other person with me. It was my husband, and we were doing a technique called call blasting, which is another thing that we do to try to elicit responses from alleged Bigfoot creatures in the area. And so we blast sounds out into the forest. Sometimes we will use alleged Bigfoot sounds that we blast out. Sometimes we'll do a mix of sounds, other animal sounds, all kinds of things. And so my husband had put together a mix of sounds, and we had used part of a hoop knock sequence from the famous Sierra sounds, which are a recording of what's thought to be Bigfoot sounds. So we have that mixed in. And so it was just us, and we had a laptop and some speakers out of the back of the car, and he had it set up to blast in this area. And so usually when I go out to do the Bigfoot research stuff, I am super excited because I'm so in my element. I'm such a tomboy. I love doing it. And I am not usually easily unnerved or frightened. I'm pretty brave. I've gotten braver over the years.
So you don't get scared.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I'm human. I mean, there's things that freak me out, but I've gotten much braver. And so this particular evening, I didn't want to get out of the car, and that was highly unusual. And so I was feeling really unnerved when we got to this place, and we were just kind of in a trailhead parking area in the North Georgia mountains. And
do you remember where in the mountains?
It is, but I don't really like to disclose exactly where I go. But I was there, and I opened the door. The door was ajar, and I put my feet down on the gravel. And my husband got out, and he was just kind of just out from the car, and we had the back. We were driving a Honda Pilot at the time, so the back was up, and he had the speakers set up and the laptop, and so he started playing his sounds. And on the drive-in, we'd noticed a couple of deer cross our path. And so when he started these sounds, I started hearing we were kind of in a circular turnaround kind of a thing, like the end of a Forest Service road, kind of a circular turnaround. And so I was sitting there facing out into the, maybe the tree line was 5 yards from me, and then beyond that, another 25, 30 feet into the tree line, I had heard some movement go like from off to my right, kind of to my 12 o'clock. And so I heard movement. Something was moving. And I asked my husband if he heard it, and he didn't really hear it. I said, well, something's moving. I said, it could be those deer that we saw, but something's moving. It was kind of off to my right, and now it's moved to my 12 o'clock. And so he kept doing this, playing these different sounds and stuff. The door was open, and I was looking down at my feet. And when somebody is near you, like it's quiet or it's dark or you're blindfolded, but somebody walks up next to you, you may not hear them, but you can feel that they're there because we have this biokinetic energy that we have, and you just feel that they're there.
Sure.
And so it's what makes you turn and look because you feel somebody walk up next to you. Well, I had the weirdest experience. I was looking down, and then the door was open, and that little V that is created when the door opens between the windshield and the door of the car, that open space right there, it's like the shape of a V. It felt like someone just came in and walked up and put their head right there and looked at me. And it's so much so that I sat up and looked because I expected to see somebody. And it was weird. It totally freaked me out. I was already a little unnerved and didn't want to get out of the car. And that really, really freaked me out. So I'm like, that was weird. And I didn't say anything. I just sat there quietly while he was still call blasting. And I looked down at my feet again and repositioned. And then it kind of started in my toes and went all the way up my body, up over my head. And I started to feel really tingly all over. And then it started to intensify. And all I can describe it as is kind of like a euphoric, the drugs are starting to kick in kind of feeling. Like if you've ever had that pre-surge cocktail they give you before you go into surgery. And
if you have some.
Yeah. You start to feel this woozy kind of tingly feeling. And that's kind of how I felt. And I thought it started to intensify. And I'm thinking to myself, what did I eat? Am I having an allergic reaction? What's happening to me? And so I thought, since it started to intensify, I better say something to my husband in case I fall out so he's not clueless as to what's happened to me. And so I said, I'm feeling really weird right now. And he kind of looked at me and I said, I'm feeling really tingly. And he kind of looked at me and he said, so do I. And I'm like, really? He said, yeah. And I said, it feels like it's coming from over there. And I said, that sound that I heard it walk off to my left. It was now over here to my left. And then I had that weird thing with somebody walked up and then this tingly thing happened. So I looked at him and we looked at each other and I said, is this being zapped? And he's like, I don't know. And I said, do you feel like we should leave? And do you feel threatened? Do you feel like we should leave? And he's like, and he looks and he's like transfixed on this area to the left. My husband is. And I'm like, I'm just giving him a moment to process this, or I'm trying to decide if he's in a trance. I can't figure out what's happening here. And he's like, yes, I think we should leave. And I'm like, okay. So at that point, once he said that, I pulled my feet in, shut the door, and I just started to shake. I was just like, the adrenaline was pumping. And so he packs up, the back closes, it gets in, and we drive down to the main road. I am so worked up. The adrenaline is pumping so hard that my teeth are chattering. I can't talk to him without my chin bumping up and it's hard to talk. And so when we get to the bottom of this run down to the main road, he stops and he looks at me and he goes, we have to go back. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I just left my brand new GPS, handheld GPS up there. That's how long ago it was when the brand new handheld GPS were a thing. And he'd spent all this money on it. It's brand new. And we were testing it. And I'm like, you did not leave that up there. I mean, I can't tell you how freaked out I am right now. And so he's like, we got to go back and get it. And I'm like, all right. So we go back. And so we're both like this at the dashboard, going like that, and just watching for anything moving. And so we go back up. He gets out, picks up GPS, and I see him kind of scan the area. And he gets back in and he goes, whatever it was is not here anymore. It's gone. And because the feel is completely different here. So that was my first time having a really really weird experience like that. The second time,
well, hold on a second. So even after that experience where you got so scared coming down, I guess, the mountain or from the road, you still wanted to go back.
Yes, I did, because I wanted to know what it was. And so, what I should follow up with is, at that point, we were still really new into this research. And so we went back the next day and we started, it was during the day, and we just sort of walked and canvassed the area where we thought something was standing and projecting this on us. We found an impression in the ground that looked like it could have been a footprint. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't one that you could easily cast, but it was definitely a hill. And then like it widened up like the ball of a foot. The toes were not super easy to see, but it looked like there could have been some there. And then where the toes were pointed was directly where we were parked. So I feel like, looking back now that I've had some tracker training and done this a lot more, I feel like that was an impression of a foot, that something heavy was standing there. And so that's what made me want to, like, I got over the scary part of it and just was like, okay, something was here. Yeah. And I didn't feel like it wanted to hurt me, or anything. I mean, I don't feel like I was threatening it, and I don't feel like it was threatening me. I just feel like it was just letting us know it was there,
But you did say you got a sense that you guys should leave that area.
Yeah, well, my husband did, for sure. And again, he was out of the car. I was kind of protected by the car. Okay. And so he did get a sense that he should leave. And I said, well, how do you feel? And he goes, I just felt like something was there and it was letting us know that it could see us, or whatever. And I'm just, and maybe it didn't want us there. I don't know, but we left and it was fine. But the next day when we found that impression, I was just like, okay, there's something more. I mean, just added, we heard the howl way back when, and then now we had this happen, and oh my gosh, and we told all of our Bigfoot friends, and we're like, no way, I can't believe that happened to you. And it was a place that a lot of us go and had been 100 times, and where we were in North Georgia in general is kind of a hotbed for Bigfoot activity.
Really?
It's got a long history of sightings and sighting reports. Where we were was, I can tell you that we were in White County, which is an area that has a lot of Bigfoot reports. And so I was going to say, continuing in that vein of possible infrasound experiences.
When you're saying, are you saying infra?
Infra, INFRA. Infrasound.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I went to a Florida expedition, and this was after I had some tracker training. There was a guy that was a former special ops, and he did a whole man tracking and sign cutting weekend for a lot of us that wanted to learn about it. And so we went, and it was really educational and super fun. Found out it's way easier to track a person or an animal at night. Interestingly enough.
Really?
Yep, way easier. And so we went through this weekend tracker training. And like a month or so later, I went to this expedition down in Florida. This property had been featured on one of the episodes of Finding Bigfoot. When I'm talking about it, people may recognize where I'm talking about, but they lived in North Florida. And in North Florida, it's a lot like Georgia and Alabama. It's wooded. It's not sandy soil like it is further down in. It's more like Georgia or Florida. At that point, it's very wooded. And so they lived in this area. They had some land. It was a beautiful sloping piece of land, beautiful home. It was like something out of Southern living. And it wasn't super big. It was just really beautiful. And it was decorated to the nines, inside and out. Their yard was beautiful, lush green grass. And then they had this vineyard at the top of their property where they grew their own grapes. And then they had a really nice split rail fence kind of around the back of their property. And then it dropped off deep. There was a ravine with a creek that ran through in the back. It was a beautiful, beautiful piece of property. They had, sunrooms off the back. That was a big thing in Florida. So they had a lot of space and a lot of places to observe. And they had Bigfoot activity, sightings, you name it, for years while they lived on that property. And they just accepted that it was something that they had to deal with, but wanted to understand more about what they were. So they invited investigators to
You say the property owners had cited what they thought was Bigfoot?
Yeah. And then people who had actually built the house had reported sightings of strange creatures on the property. So long history, So we were there to do an expedition on their property. And while we were there, usually when we have these expeditions, we have like a big meal together at some point. We all cook out, do a big camp meal or whatever. And so while we were doing that, the guy that had hosted the tracker training decided to give out certificates to everyone who had completed the weekend, like the month prior or whatever. So he started handing out certificates, and I got a certificate. The woman of the home had seen me get the certificate, and because I was one of the only women to get that certificate, I felt like I was more approachable, and she felt like she could come talk to me. And she said, "Since you're a certified tracker now, there's a really strange footprint up in my vineyard. Will you come look at it?" And I just started laughing. I said, "I took one tracking weekend. I am not a tracking expert, but I would be happy to come take a look at the footprint in your vineyard." And so we were camped about a mile away from her property. So she had driven over on one of those little golf cart things. And so she said, "Just come on." So I was excited that she asked me to come check this out and that there was a footprint. I wanted to see it, So she and I jumped on this little go-kart thing or golf cart thing and went to her property. And we walked up to the vineyard, and the soil there was sandy in that area. And there was a perfect little, looked like a human child's footprint, just one human child's footprint right there. It was perfect with little 5 toes, everything. Crazy. There was no trail. There was no discernible trackway that I could see. There were no other footprints. There was no transfer, like it had stepped here and then stepped somewhere else. I mean, there was nothing that I could see in my limited tracking knowledge. I could not make heads or tails of anything. And so I said to her, in my excitement to come over here with you, I forgot my flashlight. And every good tracker has a flashlight. And so she goes, "Oh, I've got one. I'll run down and get it. It's right inside the kitchen." And so I'm kneeling down at the top of her front yard in this vineyard looking at this track. And she buzzes down to her house, goes in to get the flashlight. And I'm thinking to myself, if something's going to happen, it's going to happen right now, because I am here all by myself. Yeah. No one knows where I am. And she's left me. She went in her house. And so before I could really let that thought freak me out, she's coming back with the flashlight. She comes up and she goes, "Do you smell that?" And I'm like, "Smell what?" And she's like, "I always smell that when they're around." And at that point, my phone started to ring. It was my husband calling in to check in on me. I had a flip phone. Again, you can tell how long ago it was. I had a flip phone, so I flipped it open and I start to take the call. She goes, "Take your call and walk around the perimeter of my property and see if you catch a whiff of what I'm talking about." So I did. I am talking to him, telling him what all we've been doing, and I start walking around the perimeter of her yard. And so as I finish my call, I get to the edge of her property at the end of the vineyard. So she's here, I'm there, and I'm right at the wood line, walking back towards her. I finish my call, I flip my phone, I shove it in my back pocket, I take my first step into the vineyard to walk back towards her, and several things happen all at once. Goosebumps on top of goosebumps start on the back of my legs and go all the way up my back to the top of my head. My heart starts pounding. I start to sweat. And one of her 3 dogs, she had 3 golden retrievers, and one of the dogs just starts barking like an alert bark. Arf, 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 like something's bothering it. It's like he's upset. And so I just breathe deeply and calmly walk back to her. And I kneel down and look again at the footprint. All of this is still happening, and I'm trying not to shake. And I'm looking at it. I can't make heads or tails of it. So I stand up and I look at her and I say, "I can't make heads or tails of this. This is really odd." I said, "I don't know what would have made this. I don't know why there's no more footprints. I don't know. It doesn't look like one of those crossovers where something made a print and then their back foot made a print on top of it, like bear prints do, that people often mistake that for a Bigfoot print." There was nothing like that. And so I said to her, "Can I just ask you a question? How are you feeling right now?" And she goes, "Oh, I have goosebumps." And she pulled her arm up. And so I pulled my arm up next to hers, and I said, we had matching goosebumps. And I said, "Yeah, I couldn't help but notice that your dog started barking when I started feeling this way." She goes, "Oh yeah." She goes, "If they're here and they're around, the youngest one will be out in the backyard barking, and the other 2 will be curled up with their tails tucked under." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, let's go check on your dog. Okay, let's go check on your dog." So we walked down to the split rail fence and looked over into the yard. And sure enough, I said, "Is that the youngest dog?" She said, "Mm-hmm." And I'm watching the dog carefully to see if he's barking at any particular thing. And he's not. His head is up and he's just like barking in a circle kind of thing, like like he hears something, like something's bothering him, but he's like, shut it off, or whatever. And so then we walk over to the house, the front of the house, and then you can see on either side, she's got like a sunroom door on either side. And sure enough, one of the other dogs curled up, tail tucked under. And then we walk around to the other side, other dogs curled up, tail tucked under. And I'm like, huh. And so about that time, I start hearing noise. I start hearing whoosh, whoosh, like something's being thrown through the leaves of the trees on the other side of the house. And I said, do you hear that? And she's like, yeah. I said, let's go check that out. Let's go see what's making that sound. And so we start walking around to the other side of the house. And as soon as I round the side of the house, I catch movement out of the corner of my eye. I have no idea what it was. It could have been a bird. It could have been a butterfly. I have no idea what, but it was fast. Just moved. And then when we got to that side, the sound stopped. But the intensity of the feeling that something was watching us or something was going on, the goosebump thing was just starting to really intensify. And I'm like, you know what? I feel like we should let people know that something's going on over here. Just in case, I said, we're just two lone women out here and we're not armed. And, let's just, we're in your yard. I get it. But this happens a lot, right? And I just feel like somebody should know what's going on over here. So I was really kind of concerned that because they were having this big meal and powwow that no one would have the radio on them or have it on close by. And so I get my radio and I call. This guy immediately answers, and his name was Adam, and Adam was a newbie. This was his first time doing any of this. And so he had come back to his tent. He was camped on her property, so he was just on the other side of where we were. He had gone to get something out of his tent. And I said, Adam, there's some stuff going on over here. Do you mind coming up here real quick as you can? And he's like, yeah, I'll be there in just a second. So he was literally there within less than a minute. And as soon as he comes, and Adam was a big, tall, thin guy. He's probably about 6'4", built kind of a skinny build, and he walked up to us, and we just kind of rushed up to him, and I word vomited as loud and as fast as I could everything that just happened. You know what I'm saying? And so his eyes are like saucers while I'm telling him, and I'm like, something is here. Something is watching us. Something's going on. And I said, I just wanted someone else to know about it, and maybe get word back to the camp, and maybe we could get somebody up here with a recorder, something. And so as soon as I finished telling him everything that had happened, it was like a hush fell over the land, like somebody flipped a switch. The dog stopped barking. The goosebumps went away. There was just like a hush. Everything was calm. And so we walked, this woman had left like a baiting station where she would leave fruit and food out for these creatures off in the wood line. And I said, let's just go walk out there and see if anything's different, or whatever. And nothing had been touched. Nothing was different. That feeling was totally intense. And again, there's been numerous documented sightings of creatures on that property. Nothing other than that experience was really wild that happened. But she had reported things like they had wrought iron bird feeders that had been twisted and found in other parts of their property. They had a glass greenhouse that had a sand floor where they saw these enormous footprints in there. I mean, they had footage of all this stuff. And one of the weirdest things that had happened on her property that just makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck, there was a giant handprint that would probably dwarf my hand by like this much on their door. They had like a storm door, on the back, on the deck coming in from the back. And so they had tried to get a picture of it to put in their book of all the evidence that they collected on their property. And so it wasn't photographing well. They did have some pictures that I had seen of it, but they went to go take some glass cleaner and shine up the back of it just so that there was nothing, interfering with a good picture, so they cleaned the back of the glass. And they went to go take a picture. The handprint was gone. So what that means is this creature was probably squatted down and had its hand on one of those handles that you push down, to open the storm door.
Yeah.
Pushed down and realized it was open and put its other hand inside and stuck its head in their door. And when I realized that, I was like, oh dear. Wow. I said, that thing was trying to come in your house or almost did. That's crazy. And so this, but you can see this handprint. It's smudgy looking, but it is a giant handprint. And so all these things had happened on her property. Later during my time there, I found about 15.5-inch impressions that were not perfect footprints. You couldn't see perfect toes or anything, but they were all around the mud around that deck. So something had been making those footprints. So I feel like it was there. It was watching. We were women, alone. We didn't have any firearms on us. All of the elements were there to make us highly approachable and highly observable. Women, as a general rule, often have sightings over men, or more, women and children too. It's just thought because we don't, as a group, we don't go into the woods as often, and when we do, we don't carry large guns. We usually are attending children. We're distracted by children, whatever. So it makes us a better candidate, maybe, to be approachable or to get a glimpse of that, that creature. So when you look at sighting reports, it's often women. But I mean, it's 50-50, but it just seems like where there was a longer engagement or opportunity, it was with women and children. So I just feel like, it's thought in the Bigfoot community that maybe women are less threatening. We smell better, obviously. So yeah.
Well, you got that going for you.
So
that lady, did she ever tell you that she actually has seen a Bigfoot?
Yes.
And knew that it was a Bigfoot, and there was no doubt in her mind?
Yes. Yeah, she had seen it. And her husband too. And I think their daughter had also had some sort of a sighting or something that was there. She was an adult and off at college or whatever. So, but they did say that they would have more interactions and more strange things happen when the daughter was home from college. So when we were there, they had hung up one of her shirts outside for her scent to be out there, just to see if that would, elicit some sort of activity or whatever. And so maybe it did, because we were out there, alone, and they were trying to get closer to us. But again, didn't see anything, but that was a really wild experience, and I'll never forget.
What do you think? I mean, I don't know how to phrase this. What do you think Bigfoot is? Do you think it's a creature that's just really hard to find and see and is very elusive? Or do you think there's some supernatural element to it?
That is a fantastic question. And in the world of Bigfoot, there is a split camp. There's what's called the scientific camp and more of what they call the woo camp. The woo, it's more of the metaphysical thing. Because
a lot of the things you're describing with the zapping or the, I don't know, the disappearing really quick, like, well, how do you explain some of these things?
When, if you look at creatures that have been around on the earth for a really long time, like dolphins, I like to use dolphins as an example. They are highly intelligent creatures. They have their own language. They have the ability to sense illness or injury, or just that something is not quite right about a human being when they're in the water. That's been documented, that they are really gentle. The whole swim with dolphins movement or whatever, they have special things set up where people can go and take children with special needs. They do really well. These animals do really well with them. The children do really well with the animals. They just have they have these kind of extra abilities that have been somewhat documented, but they're hard to document because they're animals, right? And so we can't just talk to them and have an open dialogue with them. But we've observed. We've observed a lot of, maybe 50 years ago, we would have thought would have been impossible. We've observed now that they do in fact have a language. They do echolocate. They can sense things about people in the water. That's been well documented. When I very first got into this, my research led me to believe that it was just a flesh and blood creature. I mean, that's all I knew of it. I hadn't actually seen one, and I hadn't had any real exciting interactions at that point. I mean, I'd heard the howl. I had been, maybe zapped that one time when I had first gotten into it or whatever. And I'm just like, I couldn't quite make heads or tails of those experiences. Infrasound is based in science, though. I mean, if it is a large flesh and blood creature, it's conceivable that it could produce that kind of sound, just as like a warning, a low growl, like stay away from me, that kind of thing. It could be, that's that's feasible. When you talk to other people that have had a lot of experiences, which I have talked to a lot of people about their different experiences, you do encounter elements that would fall more into the metaphysical, multidimensional creature kind of thing. So what I can tell you is what I tell everybody. I know that I don't know what it is. I feel like I need to see one, and I need to have more interaction in the environment where I feel like one is before I can really give you a solid answer on what that is. But the trackways that just suddenly disappear, there's a lot of those that have been captured and they're well documented. There are, if you want to get really into it, there are people that have claimed to have mind speak, where, like a telepathy kind of thing with these creatures, which I almost wondered if that's what was going on with my husband that one time when he felt like
he was in a trance.
He was in that trance or whatever. So, I don't know, because that hasn't happened to me personally. So I can't tell you for certain. I have had more experiences in the last couple of years. I've gotten more active in research. I've kind of gone back to the gung-ho thing. I'm working with Relic Films now, and we create documentaries trying to uncover the truth behind the unexplained in general. We're not just limited to Bigfoot. We do a little bit of everything, paranormal, aliens, you name it. If it's one of those high strangeness kinds of things, we seek to do documentaries, or we have our own podcast called Beyond the Ordinary. We'll have people that are quote unquote experts with these different things come on and talk about their experiences and that kind of thing. So we can just trying to get to the truth behind the mystery of a lot of these unexplained things. In the last couple of years, I've gotten really heavily back into it. I'm with a couple of different groups now. I'm with one group called Seekers, SEKRS. That stands for Southeastern Cryptid Research Society. The K is in tribute to one of our members that passed away. That was a part of his radio call sign, had a K in it. So they are first and foremost really into the Bigfoot Sasquatch mystery, but they're also into going a little bit beyond that, because sometimes when you are out in the woods and you're looking at these different phenomena, you encounter other phenomena and you're just like, what's that all about? That kind of thing. So it's been really interesting and eye-opening, because I would never call myself a Bigfoot expert ever. I would just call myself a student of Bigfoot or a student of Sasquatch, because there are just so many questions I don't have answers for. And this last fall, I went to the LBL, which is Land Between the Lakes, which is the extreme north part of Tennessee, southern part of Kentucky. That area is famous for its high strangeness. There are all kinds of paranormal events, all kinds of dogman sightings, Bigfoot sightings, well-documented stuff that have been there, for over a century. There's just been all kinds of really strange stuff that happened. And when I found out they were going to be filming a document, they'd asked us to come and be a part of this documentary. And I'm like, yeah, I'm up for it, or whatever. And when they told us where they were going, I was like, can we leave today? Because the LBL is just one of those bucket list places as a cryptid researcher that I really wanted to check out, because it's famous, just there's all kinds of weirdness that happens there. Yeah. So we went, and I just had it reaffirmed to me in ways that I can tell you about if you want. Yeah. that this is just way bigger than I ever ever imagined, and just walked out of that with way more questions than answers. And I thought, I'm a fairly seasoned Bigfoot researcher. I've been doing this for over 20 years. So, and it was crazy. There were a lot of things that happened that I was introduced to on the paranormal side that I don't know that I can really speak to it yet, because I'm still sorting that out. But on the Bigfoot side, we went to a place that they had previously filmed a documentary. And while they were filming the documentary, they actually saw Bigfoot creatures, multiple. They saw them. The cameraman got so upset and so freaked out that he started to leave and run and leave his camera and everything. And so they had to pull him back and say, this is why we're here. You can't leave. And so anyway, I think he resigned after that assignment or whatever. He's no longer a part of it, but they actually, they had some intense encounters and they actually saw a creature. And I'm just like, man, I wish I could have been there because that was awesome. And they haven't released the documentary yet, but it's not clear to me whether they actually captured usable definitive footage or not, because when stuff like that starts happening and people start panicking, it's crazy. It's crazy what happens. And then there's really interesting phenomena that happen too that we discovered. And so we went to this area. We went there the first night. They wanted me and this other girl to go. She is a cryptid researcher as well. She's more of a seasoned paranormal researcher, but has just recently in the last couple of years gotten into more of the cryptid side of things. So they wanted me and her to go into this area where they had been and seen the people. And they wanted us to go with this man who was a former police officer, worked this area, has had multiple sightings and interactions with Sasquatch, and has written books. He's very famous. His name is Martin Groves. So they wanted us to go with Martin. So we did. We went up there and we just kind of hung out. And the energy was charged. It felt really like it felt like you're being watched. There was just something there. And so we heard some howls. We saw some weird lights. Some weird stuff happened, but nothing definitive, right? Just nothing where we can say, I know exactly what that was. I mean, there was nothing like that. We decided to sing. We started to sing. And so we were singing. And
what were you singing?
We were singing "You Are My Sunshine," and so we were singing that over and over. And the feeling of intensity just kind of chilled and calmed, and then nothing else really remarkable happened. And so we're like, okay, whatever you guys had happen here last time, I don't know if the clan of creatures are still here or, I don't know what. So they said, well, we're going to do other stuff tomorrow. We're shooting some other stuff tomorrow. So whatever. So we did. The next day we did some other stuff. And then 2 days later we came back and they wanted an all female team. So it was me and the same girl, her name's Natalie, and then 4 other women. And it was just us. And it was the 2 cameramen that we had with us. And so he said, I don't want you to go in all meek and mild, and I don't want you to sing to them. He goes, I want you to go in there and be really more aggressive with your calls and just like I'm here. I want you to communicate with me, whatever, that kind of thing. We're like, okay. So we did. We came in and I walked up. We had to kind of walk through a graveyard. We were standing kind of in a graveyard. Well, there was an Indian burial ground up behind us, which is kind of where all this started. And it was beyond, it was like fenced and you couldn't really go in there, but it was kind of like behind this graveyard area. So we're standing in a graveyard, and graveyards don't bother me. They don't freak me out. But we were kind of on the edge of this graveyard, and we walked in, and I was kind of, the furthest up. And then Natalie was kind of behind me, like she was next to me, but behind me, and everybody else kind of trickled back. And then Kristen was standing a little bit behind me, but to this side, and she had a thermal, like a really nice thermal. And you can see anything with a heat signature with this thermal. It is awesome. So she was kind of scouting for us with the thermal while we were watching. And we did some intense calls, just kind of stood our ground, like we're here, deal with us, or whatever. And then all of a sudden, this boom, boom, boom started happening. And it was so loud and so, it shook the earth. You could feel it in your feet. You could feel it in your chest. And I just had this image in my mind of somebody picking up an oak tree and slamming it on the ground repeatedly. That's how loud it was. And because it was shaking the ground, you could feel it. And then it was coming off the top of this ridge, because we were like in this graveyard that was kind of on an incline and went up. And then there was the tree line that went up. And then, at the top of this little mountain area was right here. That's where it sounded like it was coming from. And then it kind of moved down into the forest around us. And then, it just kind of intensified. And it, instead of this just like these random banging, it turned into this rhythmic bum, 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 this rhythmic thing that was more reminiscent of like a Native American drum And I'm like, did y'all notice how the timbre changed? It doesn't sound the same. It sounds like a drum now. And she's like, they're like, yeah, we hear it. And so we're, kind of freaking out. And so at this point, I'm like, we've done it. We're calling them in. There's a whole tribe. They're about to walk out and eat us. They're coming out. And so it was very intense, very intense. And we were all like saucer-eyed going, okay, do you see anything? And we're checking with the girl with the thermal. Do you see anything? Nope, there's nothing there. I'm like, really? And I'm like, I'm like, I swear there's things here. I can just feel that there's something there. And she's like, no, I don't see anything. And I'm like, okay. And so there were like these little pinpricks of light everywhere that would kind of pop up, which could be atmospheric phenomenon or it could be something else. I don't really know, but we'd see that. At one point, again, I'm kind of standing at the head. I started to feel really woozy and sick. And I told them, I just announced it, which we tell everybody, if you start to feel strange, let us know. Don't hold it back. We need to know because that's important. And so I'm like, I'm not feeling good right now. I'm feeling kind of nauseated. I'm feeling kind of lightheaded. And so Natalie's like, get behind me. Just come get behind me. And so I did. I stood behind her. And then a little bit later, another girl on the other side started complaining of the same thing. And so we pulled in tighter as a group, and that seemed to help whatever was making us feel bad. Kind of we don't feel bad anymore. Infrasound, don't know what it was. We just kind of felt a little freaked. And so I'm about a foot taller than Natalie. She's only about 5'1". But we were on an incline, so that made us almost level, and she was right in front of me. And so we were kind of talking about what we wanted to do next. And everything had kind of stilled for a minute. We were just no more, the sounds had kind of died down or whatever. And then our cameraman, Greg, just lets out 3, wah, wah, really loud, like a real manly kind of gruff call. And as soon as he did that, the pounding on the mountain started back up again. And then we looked up and you could see, like, it almost looked like somebody standing behind a tree with a really dim flashlight. And so you could see like this dim beam of light come behind the tree. It was very dim, but it was clearly a light that was coming behind the tree. And then all of a sudden there were 3 little things up there, like on the ground, like crouched down, like 3 little figures crouched down on the ground. And I'm like, y'all see that, right? And they're like, yeah, we see it. And I don't have super great night vision. And so I was just confirming with everybody. I'm like, Kristen, do you see that? I mean, do you see anything on the thermal? She goes, I don't see anything. She goes, and when you have a thermal up, it destroys your night vision because it's bright in your eyes. So if you pull it away, it takes a while before you can see. So she can't keep doing this because it wouldn't be any good. So she's just on thermal scouting the area. She sees nothing. And so at one point it becomes clear there's these 3 little things up at the top. And they're kind of doing this a little bit. You can kind of see that. I can see that even with my bad eyesight, but the others could really see it. And so I'm like, what do you think that is? Are those squatches? Are they down? What is that? And so we were just not sure what it was. And this all happened really, really quick. And then after he did right after he did the 3 calls, so we're kind of looking at him and we're talking about what we want to do next. Do we want to go a little further in the tree line? What do we want to do next? What does he want to shoot next? And while he's turned back looking at us, we're still faced the tree line with whatever's up there. And all of a sudden I hear him scream and jump out of the way and draw his gun. I didn't know he drew his gun until after the fact, but that's what he did. He screamed, jumped out of the way, and he drew. And right at that moment, Natalie goes down in front of me like this, and she had a big can of bear spray on her. That's what she had. And so she fires a big stream of bear spray. And so I see it. It goes out like 20 feet. I can see the stream of bear spray. But I go down to grab her because in my mind, I'm like, something just tagged Greg and it's about to get Natalie. I'm going to scoop up Natalie and we're going to run, whatever's going to happen. And so I did not see what Natalie and Greg saw, and neither did the other girls. And nothing was on the thermal. Kristen saw nothing on the thermal. But what they saw was something that was humanoid, that had long, skinny arms that was loping and charging towards us. That's what they saw. And that's why he jumped out of the way and drew his gun. And at the same time, Natalie pulled up her bear spray and shot it. And when she shot the bear spray stream at it, it kind of stunned it and it backed off. It didn't pursue us anymore. And then, of course, because it was bear spray, we all had to leave, because we're all starting to cough. There's bear spray in the area. So we all kind of retreat back to the ground, or to the road where we're parked. And so we're all just kind of scratching our heads, and we're asking them a million questions about what they saw, because none of us saw it. We just saw, I saw her go down. I saw the stream, but I couldn't see what she was shooting. And we had to make sure everybody was okay, and everybody was fine. But we talked about that for hours. Nobody slept. We talked about that for hours, and we're like, what was that? What did you see? I said, that doesn't sound like anything I have ever heard of as a Sasquatch. Do you think that was a Sasquatch? And they said, no, doesn't match any description we've ever seen. And I said, well, I've never seen a dog man, but I've interviewed a few people that have seen it, and that didn't sound like a dog man either. So do you think it was a dog man? No. So we start doing some research. We hit Google real hard and we're looking at all these different things. The closest thing that we can think of that we saw was called, or referred to as, a rake, which is a paranormal creature. I have more questions than answers. I don't know what that was.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. I don't know why, because the pounding sound and all that has been associated with Bigfoot. I've never experienced it. And now that I have, it's a haunting sound. I like, wow. I mean, nothing that I know of makes a sound that loud and can shake the earth like that. Nothing I know of. It's not, like a missile or an explosion or something, because it was that powerful. But those kinds of things are associated with Bigfoot, Sasquatch stuff. But now that I went to this place of high strangeness and have had the veil pulled from my eyes again to a new level, I'm just like, okay, I don't know what that was. I mean, the closest research tells me is that was a rake. And I don't really know much about rakes. Again, you can see a lot of videos of people who allegedly captured a rake going up and down. They're real fast, and they go all over they climb up and down houses and stuff. But the AI is such a problem. I don't know what to believe is real and what's not. And then that beam of light that came out behind the tree, and then we see these three things. So was that a portal? Did these things come out of a portal? I don't know. You hear people talk about it and you think, oh, they're wacky talking about all this stuff, but I just saw it. I don't know what that was. I have no idea. And so now that I'm researching more of the high strangeness, not just Bigfoot, and lumping it all in together, one of the guys in our group, Trey Hudson, he's a really awesome researcher, and he is former military intelligence and very smart man. He has done a lot of work on the Meadow Project, which has been referred to as Skinwalker Ranch of the South. If you're familiar with Skinwalker Ranch, there's a lot of high strangeness that happens there, from Bigfoot to skinwalkers, which are kind of like dogmen or, I don't know, werewolfy type things. They're shapeshifter kind of creatures, alien stuff. I mean, all this happens, and that's out in a ranch in Utah. And so that's a famous place of high strangeness. So, but it's famous kind of like the LBL is famous for its high strangeness or whatever. But Trey has worked extensively and has 2 books out on the Skinwalker Ranch of the South, this meadow area that they have discovered. He explained it, and I quote him often, all of these things, when you study them individually, are very strange. But when you look at the commonalities or look at how they might be connected, it's easy to see that they're all facets of the same diamond, which I thought was really profound. So it's just a big mystery, and they may all be interconnected. We just don't know. I don't know that we will ever know. And for me, that's part of the thrill of it, the last great mystery, just trying to understand all of this stuff and chase after it. I could be involved in a lot of other things that were a lot less interesting or whatever. But I just, and when people ask me like, why do you do this? I'm like, because it's just trying to get to the bottom of that mystery, and just you see some really strange things and experience some really strange things, and you're not crazy. Right. You're like, I'm just a normal person. So if that's happening to me and I'm telling you that happened to me, you don't have to believe me, but I can tell, but that, what was it? I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and make claims that, oh, that was this or that, because I don't know. I don't know what it was. Yeah. But I know that I don't know, and I know that it's really weird, and I know that I would love to try to experience it again for longer so I can try to make more sense of it. So I don't know.
Well, the skeptic would say, we don't have a Sasquatch body. We don't have this evidence or that evidence, but there's so many stories or so many eyewitness accounts, so many unexplained things. And now the government has basically come out and said aliens are real. President Obama a couple weeks ago said that they're real.
Oh, yeah.
That he hadn't seen them, but and all these videos that they're showing and the congressional testimony, like you said, I think it's all connected. Yeah. I don't know how to explain it, but I do think there's something there.
Yeah. I mean, when you have all these accounts and you look at them all individually, they add up, and there's just so much stuff. I just refuse to believe that there are that many people that are delusional. I just don't, because most of these people are, when you interview them and take time with them, and one of the first things we do is kind of try to assess their credibility. Right. And most of them are very credible people. I mean, they hold steady jobs. They're involved in their community. They go to church. They have kids. They do they're just normal like you and me. Yeah. And, and they experience these things, and they have no explanation for it. And many of them experienced it just off chance. They were just camping or hiking or something. I mean, they're not devoted to it like I am. They're not out there looking for these things to happen. So,
and I mean, when are you taking me with you?
Whenever you would like to come. In fact, I brought you a hat.
That's for me?
For you, to induct you into the club so that you can be a believer.
Thank you. I love it. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. It's got an alien and Bigfoot.
Yeah, it's got everything. Yeah.
Perfect.
All the facets.
I love it. Well, I mean, I think there's definitely something there. Besides, in the past 6 years alone, all the conspiracy theorists have been vindicated. So I don't think it's too far.
It is crazy. I know to say, I mean, we live in a time now where almost all the really big conspiracies have been proven to be true.
Yes.
So you're like, okay, so do you think I'm crazy now? Yeah. I mean, because when I first started doing it, people would look at me like, oh, she's fringe, and I'm just like, I'm really not. I just, at the very least, I mean, I love, like I said, I grew up a tomboy. I had the woods behind my house. I love being outside. I love being in the woods. And I love camping, and I love off-roading, and I do all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So at the very least, if nothing happens, if I don't uncover some rare mystery or have some really weird experience, even if none of that happens,
you're still outside.
I'm still having an awesome camping trip. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, and that's what I love about it, because it meshes with all the things I like to do anyway. And it just, there's just something about sitting around a campfire and talking conspiracy theories and Bigfoot stories. I mean,
it's good for the soul.
It is so good for the soul. Yeah. So good for the soul. And you have so much fun.
It's what America was built on.
Right.
The West and the camp stories about ghosts and
so
Sasquatches.
We just have the best. We just have the best time. So it's never not a good time.
Yeah.
And I just, maybe one day I will get my wish and get a really good glimpse.
I think you're gonna be the one to find a baby Bigfoot, nurse him, and bring him out into the open, and he'll be on the podcast. Teach him English.
I will do.
What was that show called? Harry and the Hendersons.
Harry and the Hendersons. Yeah. Yes. And we do get criticized for that, because some people say you're going out there looking for Harry and the Hendersons, and it may not be. It may be more like the slasher Bigfoot movie or whatever.
It may kill you. And but whatever. That's the way to go.
I've never felt threatened, I mean, I've felt uncomfortable, sure, especially when that pounding started, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're coming out. They're going to get us. We're going to have to answer for it now. What is it, but I've never felt that I was in imminent danger, so.
Well, awesome.
And I do, for all those who may see this, I do always carry in the woods. So we're good.
Is there anything you want to tell people that may be interested in Squatching or Bigfoot or want to get started?
I think if you're interested, you should definitely give it a go. There's all kinds of groups on Facebook that you can join and learn more about how to go about it wherever you live. And if you are, if you live locally and you have an interest and you have questions, I'm happy to entertain them. You can always message me through my Bigfoot Chick Adventures page on Facebook. Happy to start a little dialogue with you about that. But there's lots of places to go that are nearby, and they're great for camping. And again, like if nothing happens, you don't see a Sasquatch, nothing strange or unexplained happens, it's still a great camping trip and still a great place and a beautiful place to spend time.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you for that. Melissa Adair, BigfootChickAdventures.com. Is that right?
It's just Bigfoot Chick Adventures on Facebook.
On Facebook.
And then you can follow me on Relic Films Media on YouTube, relicfilmsmedia.com. We're everywhere. All the socials.
Next time you come back, I need a baby Bigfoot sitting next to you. Right?
I will do my best.
Or a full-grown Bigfoot, whatever. Awesome. Well, thank you. And you don't want to be called a Bigfoot expert, but you're the most expert.
All right, well.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.